Hello everyone. We have been covering for a while now this topic of the Finternet. I have referenced some things about the www, the World Wide Web, and of course taken things to the next level, the WWL, the World Wide Ledger. And that concept seems crazy in itself, but I want you guys to understand the bigger picture, and that is this. When you hear people like Augustine Carstens of the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, put a lot of emphasis on specifically the Finternet and offline CBDCs. Why is that? Why would somebody be so passionate in his own way and put so much focus on the Finternet? Well, in today's outline, we're going to really get into why that is so important and also present to you some of my key findings on why QNT, will hit those prices that you saw in that thumbnail. And how about this? That's lowballing it. Yeah, that sounds nuts. That sounds bat crazy, does it not? I get it. I totally get it. Especially when you see the prices where they're at right now. But how about this for size? BTC in itself, years ago, many years ago, nobody thought it would ever go to $100, let alone $1,000, $10,000, or as of recently, over $70,000 per BTC. Now that's BTC. Let's talk about the one that provides interoperability for 100 plus blockchains, thousands of use cases. But what is on the back end? So stick around to the end of this outline, especially if you're on the cusp of thinking about jumping into QNT, and if you're one of the people that simply hold it and you just want some more news. Smash the like, share with others if you haven't done so already. This is going to be one of the most solid outlines that I've ever created, and I stand by that research. Let's jump into the material. So number one, we need to discuss a couple things. Does, for example, Ripple XRP have a offline CBDC solution? Well, short answer, Ripple has the potential, as we know, to support offline CBDC transactions, but it's a complex challenge. And another disclaimer, I, of course, I'm a big fan of Ripple XRP, Stellar, and so on. So this is not FUD, but there's one thing about the potential of getting there, and there's another thing when it comes to Quant already being there. Yes, already being there. All right, so that's XRP. What about Stellar? Well, in short, while Stellar does not inherently provide a fully native offline CBD solution, its design and capabilities, of course, make it well suited for supporting the development of such systems, particularly in collaboration with specialized hardware and security providers. They have talked for the longest time about how they want to provide some of these solutions, especially when it comes to the old flip phones. But this is what really caught my eye. And let's go ahead and take you over to there. This particular person, his name is Jean Desgogné, if I pronounce that right. He's a CPA. In this outline, he refers to Bashir Namari, if I pronounce that right. Probably not. But the key thing is, when I full screened it, like he says, and this guy, by the way, has done a lot of research, right, in regards to blockchain DLT. But he says, if you worked with anyone who worked on a CBDC-related project, you would know that central and commercial banks are trying to find solutions to solve this particular problem of, quote, offline payments to allow CBDCs to act as cash. Remember how we talked about so many times lately? Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer cash system. Quant, peer-to-peer financial system. In addition, central banks don't want to view or see people's transactions simply because they are not interested and don't want to bother too much work to deal with the public. Some people say that's not true. Well, jump a little bit more into this. I will take you now over to the IMF, right? International Monetary Fund.org site, IMF.org. Look what it says. Central banks should harness crypto's technical wizardry to enable a rich monetary ecosystem. Now, some key areas that I want to put focus into here, because believe it or not, if you go to this particular publication, it was written by, for example, Augustine Carstens. So it says when people or companies make a payment, they are trusting in two things: the money itself and the payment system that executes the transaction. While often taken for granted, these two elements are crucial foundation for any economy. Every day, billions of times, households and businesses put their trust in this system and the institutions underpinning it. Does he mention a whole bunch about in regards to crypto? Yes, he does. Digital innovation is upending both money and payments. Cryptocurrencies and decentralized finance are built on the premise of decentralization, aiming to replace traditional financial intermediaries, bankers, brokers, custodians, etc., with technological solutions. But do we have anything recent? Well, the answer is yes. Recent developments have underscored crypto's failure to fulfill the requirements of a monetary system that fully serves society. Its shortcomings are not just bugs, but structural flaws. This is why we argue that the monetary system, the future, should harness the new technical capabilities demonstrated by crypto, but be grounded in the trust of central banks and what they provide. That was cited, of course, back in 2022 by the Bank of International Settlements. They address the flaws, but this thing, you ever hear the one and only Gilbert Verdian of Quant talk about the internet trust, the internet value? He talks about it all the time, right? But this quote: any legitimate transaction that can be carried out with crypto can be accomplished better with central bank money. A lot of us aren't fans of this concept and so on, but if anything, can it be used for good? Obviously, it could be used for bad, but it's how the two come together. People want to see utility in motion, especially when it comes to QNT, and they're frustrated about this, right? So when I jumped into this, I liked what I saw because, if anything, it really breaks down that there is a need, of course, for crypto, and there's a need for even DeFi applications. And when I jumped into the next part of the research, I found some things that were really eye-opening, okay? So I'm going to jump up to this part. This is, again, from the International Monetary Fund. It says, taking digital currencies offline. You can see a pattern here. You can see where the inception of this was created. People could say that it was popularized by Augustine Carstens, and especially with his emphasis about the finternet and offline CBDCs, wholesale CBDCs. But the whole key thing is the quant connection. Was Roslyn the groundbreaking foundation for all this coming together where it solidified quant network through the overledger? I think the answer is yes. How so? As we jump down, it talks about the future of offline CBDCs may lie in the technological past. But when you see talks about how this is not something new in Web 2 at all, that this is something that has been running to push, like it says, digital payment systems, and how it goes back 30 years to a time long before smartphones, you can see why Augustine Carstens is putting so much emphasis on it. So, a little bit more about what it says. The fact that the future of offline central bank digital currencies may lie in the technological past, well, do central banks need to develop economies like Ghana or Uruguay? Do they want to give people some fancy digital currency to replace their, their CEDIS or pesos? The key thing is understanding that you need an offline digital currency. If you want to call it CBDC, call it whatever you want. But Augustine Carstens is putting so much emphasis on it. That's where it's at. Because look, there's compelling reasons for this. And like it says, one is better risk management, as digital currencies may be harder to steal than the bales of paper money. Much of the world's consumer commerce already takes place digitally. And look at these statistics. Over 90% of it takes place in countries like China, Sweden. Central banks don't want to leave billions of transactions in the hands of internet payment platform operators, and it's an issue of financial inclusion for millions of people who can't afford to use a conventional banking system or don't have internet access. Right. Supply and demand. When you see later in this outline, if you stuck around, there's a lot of people that won't stick around, and I get that. But if you stick around, you will see how Quant is literally the one that has accomplished this. And a lot of people don't even realize that they already have. Now, there's some big news that was recently shared over at the Quant Network and specifically on their YouTube channel, and we'll get into that, right? You want to stick around for that. But in this outline, the concept of an offline digital currency, offline digital payment systems could verify availability of funds, validate transactions without the need to check in with an online ledger. That in itself differentiates Quant. They could use old tech, non-internet driven mobile phones, or something like a souped up stored value card. Now, granted, we talked about Stellar is trying to do it with old flip phones. Just because we in the United States aren't really using that, maybe some of our older, generation folks or so on are still doing that. You got to keep in mind places in Africa, they're using it all over the place. So Stellar does, try to fill in that need. But a little bit of history, and this is good. You might not be into history, but listen to this. Back in 1993, the Bank of Finland launched its Avant stored value card. Maybe you guys remember that. It was capable of offline payments using a custom-made card reader device, but it never caught on, and it was dropped as recent as 2006. Even the Westminster Bank of the United Kingdom tested something similar, store value payment platform called Mondex back in 1995, but Avant and Mondex showed that the technology worked, and that's the bottom line. You ever wonder why the country of England, for instance, right, the United Kingdom leads this charge when it comes to digital finance going into Web 3? Because it got a lot of history behind it, right? Long before the concept of a popularized internet, even back in the Web 1 days. Not enough merchants, though, acquired the required point-of-sale devices, and even though both allow peer-to-peer transactions, users had access through special devices. Now, a little bit more about this offline concept. Recently, several enterprises have launched updated versions of the Avant and Mondex concepts that are capable of handling offline payments. Think about this for a second, guys. It says that some require intermediary devices such as mobile phones, online connections to fully settle transactions, but that is to keep the device costs down and eliminate the need for internal battery power. All right, enter in another particular conglomerate. Enter in Germany. The 170-year-old German banknote company, who is called Geisk plus Devariant, if I pronounce that right or wrong, is testing an offline CBDC platform with the Bank of Ghana based on stored value card. It is configured to allow for unlimited consecutive offline transactions but uses the intermediary device. The eCD can be used by anyone with either a digital wallet app or a contactless smart card that can be used offline. The People's Bank of China is even in the mix. They have reportedly been experimenting with similar hardware wallets, part of its trials for the digital yuan. Now, what's important is to understand a little bit more about this, right? So I decided to jump down to this part, and it mentions below this whole thing that even though these companies rolled out these offline platforms that piggyback on text-based, not internet-enabled mobile phones, you have the whole concept that you can have a feature on these phones that can do it all basically for as little as $5, right? And that was called Whisper Cash System. It involves a $2 device attached to its phones and a SIM card. But when you get into more of the low income talk, they talk about how 66% of adults own at least, this kind of a phone. In 2017 alone, into 2018, the Central Bank of Uruguay conducted a successful 6-month test of how a CBDC that users could access using features smartphones would be developed, at least back to 2022. Where are we going with this? Well, we're going with this is the concept of tamper resistant. That has central banks wanting to be more interested in all of it, right? And getting down to this part, remember Bank of Canada? Remember the whole thing of, Gilbert Verdian and Quant going to Canada? Well, the Bank of Canada explores such universal access devices intended to incorporate attributes of cash, prevent the interruption of digital transactions in case of an infrastructure failure. In its exploratory work on a digital euro, the European Central Bank definitely considered what? Offline functionality. Whether any of these ideas will go into full operation is an open question, but it seems that in many regions, offline access may be make or break. All right, this statement, let's pause there. Whether any of these ideas will go into full operation, guess what? The answer is it really did. And when we get towards the end of this outline, I promise you, you will see firsthand how that works. But I want to get into more of the good, juicy stuff. Let's take you over to here. This guy, Biju Shah. Who is he? He's head of Nordic Center, Bank of International Settlements, Innovation Hub at the Bank of International Settlements sector for this particular branch. He stated a while back, we've released a handbook for offline payments with CBDCs. How long ago was this? About 3 years ago, according to the interpretation. So you can see how this was something that they've been working on for a while. So this handbook is a comprehensive look over the landscape for offline payments with CBDCs, covering the types of technologies, risks, privacy, inclusion, resilience, considerations, but it's aimed at unpacking the complexity of offline functionality to be a resource for the community as deeper design, implementation, and operation questions are being asked. Goes on to state that this will be updated again in the future. Guess what? It has been. It absolutely has been. I'm going to take you to this next part. Why is this important? Well, it will lead you to Project Polaris, Handbook for Offline Payments with CBDCs. Now, Project Polaris, when we go here, you will see this. And it was updated May 11, 2023. Now, some of you guys are going to say, well, this is old news. You don't understand. I don't mean that disrespectfully. You got to understand that everything had a starting point. And where we go with this is a finishing point. And if anything, who created a mechanism for this to all come into the light or fruition? It's Quant. And of course, I'll show you a demo here in a bit. So I'm going to take you to here. We have cited many times the U.S. Treasury. It gets really interesting. So I have gone ahead and fast forwarded, if you will, to this particular section, page 3756 of the Future of Money and Payments. This is straight from home.treasury.gov. Go look it up for yourself. Type in Future of Money and Payments because everybody wants a citation. So this talk about a functionality, keyword functionality, okay, in natural disasters or other adverse circumstances and offline capabilities, how they could sustain commerce under these scenarios where offline is here, defined as the ability to execute a CBDC transaction without internet access. These are concepts, you guys. Concepts. Do we have this in fruition? Do we have a product? The answer is yes. As I got more into this, it will state some other things about these considerations, but more importantly, is it very well possible to see an advancement, whether it's educational or not, to leverage and to overcome the potential technical barriers of using a payment system that may disproportionately harm some communities, because some people feel as though CBDCs would be that problem. If possible, offline capability should be incorporated into the new payment system. This is referenced from the United States Treasury, for crying out loud, guys. The payment system should support equity advancing initiatives and with the cooperation of range of organizations could be used for the administration of social safety net programs. Now, I get it. Some people will say, well, when Trump becomes president, he vowed that, there won't be CBDCs. This right here, printed all the way back, was it a couple years ago, has stated that no matter what the political, whoever's in political office, to still consider some of these aspects for use case. Why is that? Well, it talks about it right here, plain as day. I'll highlight it for it. It says a CBDC could serve the unbanked and underbanked by providing a low-cost, easily accessible alternative to existing private sector payments services. And to do so, there would likely need to have an option for access to CBDC that did not require technological access for lower value transactions. It could potentially increase access to other financial services. I would say that's pretty darn worth looking into. All right. What about this statement about policy considerations? Again, these are just considerations, right? And you guys know sometimes because the person's running for political office, things could change. So the reduced need for the transfer of physical cash. Think about that, for example. We, as a society, especially post-pandemic, have been transitioning to not be so focused on cash, right? Cashless societies, as the saying goes, especially in Japan. But this is the United States. It says, as it's designed, implemented, and maintained, a payment system that is designed by the federal government should take particular notice. All right? Call to action, if you will. It says, yet a CBDC could also further exacerbate financial exclusion for individuals lacking reliable access to those technological services. How so? It's the ability to pay for any costs associated with the system, the identification for other requirements to establish accounts, or trust in the appropriate use of the data collected with a CBDC system. Goes on to mention, to mitigate the risk, the United States, and look what it says right next to it, CBDC could incorporate offline functionality. At the same time, the development of a U.S. CBDC should be coupled with governance efforts to increase mobile and broadband access. The United States should also seek to maximize, user choice and take steps to preserve the ability to or of consumers to use cash. Finally, use of a new payment system, including a potential US CBDC, should not be mandated. All right, does that fall in line about not having one? True, could be. But it's this statement right here. And I dug deep through this. And I know a lot of people just want it all in 15 minutes. Sorry, don't work that way. And if that offends somebody, I'm not going to apologize for it anymore. There are potential modifications to instant payment systems that would make financial inclusion aspects of CBDC and instant payment systems comparable. Specifically, instant payments systems could have an associated framework. Notice what it says, framework or foundation. Think about it. Don't overthink about it. You already have frameworks and the foundation built through a standard, ISO TC 307. Let's talk a little bit more about this. It could include technology. Gee, I wonder what that could be. That participants could use with their communities and customers to promote inclusion. All right, what about the banks? Banks could be encouraged to offer low-cost or no-cost accounts to consumers. These accounts could include access to instant payment services. Some people say, well, yeah, FedNow. But the point is, this could be a gateway. I love this terminology. Gateway. Gee. Haven't we be talking a lot about gateways when it comes to Quant and the Overledger? Let's throw that out there. But anyway, this could be a gateway into the banking system for consumers who are unbanked. For consumers wary of the banking system, non-bank providers offer similar accounts or other intermediation functionalities. However, they currently generally lack direct access to Federal Reserve payment systems and are not subject to comprehensive federal prudential regulation. Goes on to more about stablecoins. More than what you can read more about it if you want. I need to take it to the next part because otherwise it will be 2 hours, right? Let's take you over to this, okay? And that is retail digital payments in India itself to double to 7 trillion by 2030. It's a report. Think about that for a second, guys. In the report, how urban India pays Kearney Amazon Pay said Strong adoption of digital payments and online purchases have potentially led to permanent shift in consumer behaviors. And what's going to be fueling it? Fueling offline adoption as well. Yeah, that's a big, huge market. So I did mention this, and that is the Project Polaris Handbook. You're going to see a little video about this that I've chopped up a little bit. Hear it, listen to it, soak it in, because after that, we're going to connect the rest of this. If you hold QNT or thinking about getting into it, it's very vital that you pay attention to stuff like this. Here we go.
In our fast-moving, hyper-connected world, the way we use money to make payments and do business is changing. Many countries are increasingly relying on digital online payment systems instead of cash. But our growing dependency on these online systems can affect our ability to pay when they become unavailable due to system outages, cyber attacks, or even natural disasters. Being able to make payments when offline could provide a solution. An offline payment is a payment between two parties which are not connected to a ledger system. The ability to make offline payments when systems are unavailable could improve the resilience of payment systems and provide backup during a crisis. Offline payments could also enable financial inclusion wherever internet and telecommunications connections are unreliable or non-existent. And some solutions could provide digital payment alternatives for those who can't use mainstream options. Offline payment solutions could extend some of the features of using cash into the digital space, giving people more choice. Project Polaris from the BIS Innovation Hub Nordic Centre investigates the design of secure and resilient online and offline central bank digital currencies, starting with a focus on offline payments using CBDCs. In a global survey conducted as part of this project, the ability to pay with CBDC when offline is important to many central banks. The project helps central banks to understand the range of reasons and usage scenarios, the technologies available and the security considerations, key threats, risks, and risk mitigating measures, privacy, inclusion, and resilience design principles, the design and architecture considerations, operational and change management issues. Implementing offline payments will be complex, with various technological, security, and operational considerations that need to be planned and designed for as early as possible. These could influence approaches to developing policy, defining roles and responsibilities, implementation and operations, investment decisions. Offline payment solutions can be based on tamper-resistant hardware, software, or both. They can operate in 3 modes: full, intermittent, or staged, and have several central and remote components. These influence how objectives such as privacy, inclusion, accessibility, and resilience could be achieved, and which risks would need to be managed. Some of the risks include cybersecurity, double spending, counterfeiting, fraud, lost value, operations, supply chains, or reputation. Here are some of Project Polaris's key findings. There's no one-size-fits-all. Each country will have different reasons for providing offline payments capabilities. A risk-based approach must be taken from the earliest stages of designing the technology and operations. The design of a CBDC system providing offline payments would be influenced by a combination of factors, including usage scenarios, privacy, inclusion, accessibility, resilience needs, available infrastructure, risk management. The entire ecosystem of public and private actors need to collaborate with clear roles, responsibilities, and expectations. Improvements in network coverage and connectivity could reduce some needs for offline payments. However, some level of capability should be provided in the public interest, for example, for resilience reasons. Individuals and businesses will want CBDC-ready payment solutions that are reliable, easy to use, convenient, widely accepted, and provide a seamless user experience, both online and offline. CBDC systems must be secure and resilient, working whenever and wherever for everyone in society. Project Polaris, ensuring trust in a secure and resilient future monetary system.
All right, welcome back. So with that said, I'm going to take you to this next part over here. And the reason why I'm doing that is I want you guys to understand, again, the bigger picture. So, we talked about some of these key things. And, for a lot of people, we hear these concepts of, digital adoption and how it's like gaining ground. Go back to India. We cover the whole thing about BRICS and so on. Well, India is part of the BRICS nations. It's the I in BRICS. With digital adoption, fast gaining currency, India is likely to see retail digital payments double to $7 trillion by 2030 from current levels. That's crazy. With digital adoption, fast gaining currency, India likely to see some of that. And again, these levels, it was done by a study from Kearney and Amazon Pay. A little bit more about this offline adoption. Talks about this permanent shift. But as I got more into another source, this is from omfif.org, it's the concept of offline functionality. Is it really truly worth it? Think about this, guys. For a lot of us, we wonder, we come to the conclusion, a lot of talk about this, but is it really, really, truly worth it? Well, I think it is, but how so? This will explain to you how so. So number one, this was posted May 12th, or May 14th, 2014. May 12th is my birthday, so kind of got ahead of myself. But central banks need not to be discouraged by design considerations to achieve financial inclusive and resilient payment systems. But on the other hand, it's just the initiatives, and if anything, collaborating with somebody, Quant Network, for instance, to get it done. So the implementation of this, guys, towards the payment systems, many are looking to include offline functionality as a key feature. According to a survey conducted by the Bank of International Settlements Innovation Hub, Nordic Center, again, back to the whole thing of Project Solaris, 98% of central banks consider offline payments for retail CBDC either vital or advantageous. Yeah, you better believe it. If you don't understand the supply and demand now, especially after reviewing that little short video from the BIS, by the way, and then I will tell you, because this is why Augustine Carstens is pushing this so much. The concept of the Finternet. It's no longer a concept. It's literally here. Quant is allowing it to be the plug that connects to the WWL, the worldwide ledger. It seems that offline payments will be very complex to implement, but according to OMFIF's 2023 Future Payment Survey, 69% of respondents view offline payments as a challenge to implement. At the end of this video, I know you're waiting to get to there. We see the demo. That challenge has been accomplished. And listen to this, 41% viewing it as the most challenging feature. Implementing offline payments could possibly compound the already difficult process of setting up the infrastructure for central bank digital currency. Central banks will need to ensure that the technical, operational, and security architecture can support payment both online and, of course, offline. This will be especially difficult due to the differing requirements for offline and online systems. But what if you have the overledger? I know it sounds crazy, but it's true, and you're going to see it for yourself. Again, stick around. So how much more complex and costly will it be to implement some of these offline payments and that functionality to address existing issues such as financial exclusion or lack of developed communication infrastructure? Offline payments could deliver many benefits, and this is why I think you should read some of this stuff, or at least hear it from me. So there's benefits. Are they clear? It says enhancing payment systems are resilient. Financial inclusion and cash will resemble some of this, but central banks will prioritize these benefits differently, depending on whether they come from emerging or developed markets. This is why, again, Augustine Carson's have been doing all these darn interviews. A little bit more. Offline functionality might also be a crucial tool for achieving digital financial inclusion by guaranteeing universal access to the unbanked, those from remote areas or from areas without adequate infrastructure. The issue is especially salient for central banks from emerging markets. 34.5% of response from the BIS Innovation Hub survey deemed offline functionality vital, while the share is only 14.5% of response from developed markets. And of course, there's a lot more about this. I'll hop down to this because there's a lot of news recently about Europe. Are you aware that the European Commission has outlined the intentions for offline functionality in the digital euro, aiming for most of the benefits just discussed? It aims for offline payments to provide a superior level of privacy. All right, in a nutshell, what does this mean? It means that their particular currency, even though it's fiat, will have a connection to CBDCs, and it'll have a story that's told on what happens with it all. Of course, there's obstacles. Absolutely. But the CBDC's ability to uphold security while offline may also be an additional challenge. Guess what we've seen in all these pilot programs from Quant really solves that problem. To mitigate these risks, central banks may need to work out the appropriate offline limits to balances, transaction values, and how to enforce them. Well, how to enforce them is to create regulations, and that is the next big step forward for all of it. When the Wild West is over, when it comes to crypto, regulations come in place, and all those ones that weren't properly regulated, this is where the concept of will they lose value might happen. All right. Furthermore, central banks will need to ensure both online and offline transactions remain anti-money laundering. If you don't know about Quant, they have a thing called Quant Authorized. That solves that problem. All right, let's take you over to the next particular part of the outline. This is cited from payments.com, PYMNTS.com. How data-rich environments can benefit bank-to-bank payments. And I'll just read this one and only quote, because I already given you guys quite a bit in this outline. So, quote, businesses are becoming much more aware and much more savvy about how to operate digitally, says James Butland, UK Managing Director at Mango Pay. He told Payments, at least back in January, explaining that handling bank-to-bank payments offline comes with a lot of admin, a lot of costs, time lost. Remember how many times we've seen interviews of Gilbert Veridian saying that the whole concept of the quant overledger is so you can save time, save costs, because you won't have to spend all that time developing your own blockchain. That's the beautiful thing about being blockchain agnostic. Remember there was a particular lady that had a problem. She was from a particular company. Don't quote me on it. You could go back if you want. And she was talking about how it was costing her an overhead about like over $10,000 a month, and went with Quant and cut that significantly down to like $1,000. Crazy, right? Multiply that when we get to Web3. Quant not only saves money, that creates supply and demand. You may not think of it now because of the price of Quant, but for a investing point of view, wow. All right. Let's get into some of the real big money talk. So, this whole concept of banking as a service, we just talked about. Well, were you aware that just 2 years ago, guys, Angela Strange of Andreessen Horowitz predicted that every company will become a fintech company. This is already playing out, Oberst. Today, APIs mean any software company can add payments and banking products and services directly to its customers under its own brand. Adding payments products is not only an additional revenue stream, but it has become essential to software companies. Jawohl, brand and profitability. Embedded finance enables by banking as a service could be worth $3.6 trillion by 2030. For customers, this means that payments and banking products and services can be embedded deeper into the customer journeys at the point of need. All right, back to being serious. Today, banking as a service offerings include bank accounts, branded cards, and payment solutions, but will extend to lending, investing, and other fintech products in the near future. Some of these services are hyper niche, such as Uber's Visa debit card, which is designed specifically for its drivers, offering no fees, instant pay, overdraft protection, and highly targeted rewards. What about the US? In the US, over the last decade, the number of partner banks that offer software companies access to their banking suite has grown more than 5 times. But here's the bottom line. 3.6 trillion embedded finance enabled by banking as a service could be worth 3.6 trillion by 2030. What would be the top one that we know of as we speak as banking as a service? Say what you want. Quant's Overledger is the premier banking as a service platform. My God, look at Project Rosalind. I think you guys understand where I'm going with that. All right, before we wrap things up, you want to see a little bit more of the juicy stuff? The Society of Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, better known as SWIFT, was also stepping up its game to make instant cross-border payments a reality. Now, we talked about some of this stuff in regards to the deep dive in the past. But the point is, by the end of the decade, many domestic instant payment systems will have been interlinked through similar efforts. This global payments processing infrastructure will offer cheaper instant cross-border transfers to a globalizing economy, accounting to a 53% increase in global transactional volume between 2023 and 2030, according to financial data company FXC Intelligence. And here's the whopper. By 2030, cross-border payments will amount to 290 trillion in global transactional volume. This is cited from who? BerkeleyPayment.com. It's a blog about future of payments if you want to look into it. Now, let's do some math. What is 1% of 290 trillion? Well, that's $2.9 trillion. Okay? Now, let's take you over to this. This is a site called Market Cap of QNT, $61.15. Show the price of A with B with the market cap of BTC. Well, the current market cap of BTC is this over here, right? Which is basically 1,104,801,000,000. Okay? Jumping back to this. Why is this important? Because this is not even at that $2.9 trillion value. This is going to put QNT at $76,000 per QNT per token. This is why I keep saying QNT will be the most expensive token in history. Token, I didn't say coin. I hold that coin you guys talking about. So with that also said, I got the calculator, okay? And with that also said, you know, what's interesting is if you were to take, for instance, you know, some of these numbers, all right? Well, we basically know that BTC sits at about 1.10 trillion market cap. Well, what we see right here is 76,000. So we want to get to that 2.9 mark, right? Correct. You take your own calculator and you basically do some multiplication, okay? You're going to take BTC's current market cap and you're going to multiply that by 2.62. Why is that? It's going to get you over to $2,892,000,000,000, right? If you did 2.63, it'll be a little bit too far over. So almost 2.9 trillion, okay? So we got that figure now. And again, that's from 1.10 trillion times that 2.62, give or take. There's some other numbers. It's just rounding it off. Now, when we get more into it, it comes out to be very interesting, all right? Because, again, that almost equals 2.9 trillion. All right, going back to here with the market cap of QNT with the market cap of BTC. Let's take this figure of 76,000 and simply multiply that. We will multiply that by 2.62 for we can get to that 2.9 trillion, okay? And basically, that comes out to be, I know this sounds crazy, guys, drum roll please, comes out to be $199,184 per QNT. That sounds absolutely nuts, and some people say bat-ish crazy. There's no way. But the way I look at it is this. If BTC, I get it, guys. It's been around a lot longer. Retail knows about it and so on. But if they were able to, in 15 years, go over to over $70,000 with virtually no use case, compared to Quant, with interoperability of 100 plus blockchains, pretty much any blockchain. You know, they stated that if there is one that's not on the list, let us know and we'll create interoperability on it. If you don't believe me, go to quant.network. It literally says it in writing. All right, so there's that, plus thousands of use cases. Well, then we don't have to wait 15 years for something big like that to happen with QNT. Combine that with also better tokenomics, right? 14.88 million max compared to 21 to 22 million, give or take, on BTC. You can kind of have an idea. But my main thing is this. The whole concept of being introduced, that concept of cryptocurrency, and especially serving the unbanked, and specifically this whole concept of the Finternet, of serving people with an offline solution, that sounds nuts. I know. All right, you may think that I forgot. I didn't forget. Let's jump into this. And anybody can go view this. I get it. But you need to see it for yourself. I have fast forwarded to these key areas of this presentation. Here is the Overledger showcase. And if anything, let's watch it. And if you don't think that Quant is already ready to go and some big things are happening, remember I talked about my last deep dive? That Quant is at the doorstep of adoption. Adoption is starting. To me, this is the proof. I don't need any more proof, basically speaking. I think it's already there, and that's the bottom line. And people may not think that's the case. That's okay, too. Let's go ahead and play this. Smash the like if you haven't done so already. Here's where it's at. Here we go.
How you can use Make.com and Overledger's integration to perform offline payments. That means processing assigned transactions at a later date. So we're going to do that in two stages. The first scenario we're going to create is for submitting payments, signed transactions, which will be processed later. So we can do that with a webhook. When you create a webhook in Make, you get a URL. And what we're going to do is take that URL and we're going to submit our signed transaction data to it. So the first query string parameter we're going to add is the request ID, and that is the request ID given to you by Overledger when you create a signed transaction. So this value comes back in the response from Overledger. And then the signed data is the actual signed transaction that we're going to be executing. You can read more about those the signing of transactions on the Make page, sign a transaction, if you want to use that module, or you can read the Overledger documentation of signing transactions. So once we receive that data, we want to insert it into a Make data store, or you can use any other database you wish. So we're just taking the signed data and request ID out of the query string parameters, and we're inserting them into a data store that we've created. We can have a look here at the contents. So this is one I've submitted earlier. And this one is just a sample to make sure we're handling errors correctly. The second stage is then when we want to periodically process those payments. So you can set this up to run on a schedule every few minutes, every few hours. It's up to you. The first stage is searching our data store for any records which have not been processed. Our data store has an is processed field, so we're going to return any results where the is processed is set to false. Then we're going to use the execute v2 signed transaction module in Make for Overledger. And what we're going to do is take the records one at a time, take out the signed data, put it into the signed transaction field, and put the request ID into the request ID field. If you run this module by itself and have a look at the results, you'll see it'll return each of the records that are in the database, and it will perform all the subsequent steps for every result that it finds. Once it's executed the transaction, we either ignore it if we get an error because our second example data is an incorrect formatted signed transaction, so we're ignoring those. And if it successfully processes the transaction, we want to update the record to set the isProcessed value to true.
Bottom line is this, just in case you missed it. What does it say right there? Processing offline payments. Yeah, that's where it's at. And that's where it will be at. And a lot of people may disagree with it and so on. I just provide you guys research, connects the dots, adds some of this stuff up for myself. And that's lowballing. That's at 1%. You know, if you stay to the end of this outline, just type 1%. And I'll know that you were paying attention. And we could always pay attention to all the people who did it. So that's okay too. Thanks again for watching. Smash the like on your way out. Share with whoever you know that's looking more into QNT. Looking to do some more live shows. Thanks for sticking around. See you on the next one. If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. Say goodbye to complicated setups and hello to Decent Wallet, the hassle-free solution to your digital currency needs. With just a few taps, you can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.